Malik Hussain, and you're watching The Coffee Table. So as you all know, it's college app season, and whether you're a parent harassing your kid to apply, or you are a kid similarly harassed to apply, or you've just been through college and you're reminiscing about the experience, the summers are a sort of interesting time for all of us. So we thought, what better time to have a bunch of two experts on the show to talk to you guys, and me primarily, about applying to college and the do's and don'ts, the what's and wherefores, how can you be prepared, what should you be doing, what should you not be doing, and so forth. So joining us today on set is Shehryar Salamat, who is the Executive Director of SICAS and the Salamat Schools. Surprise! I could never have guessed. And we have Hassan Tahir, who is the co-founder of Consilium, which is a student advisory organization. I keep getting it wrong.
Student counseling firm.
Student counseling firm. I evidently need some counseling. Welcome to the show, guys. It's so nice to have both of you here.
Thank you for having us.
Good to be here.
You're inspiring me to sort of go back to school now, because this is such like a powerhouse of information here. Like, what should you do? What should you not do? So Hassan, tell me about Consilium. What services do you offer for students?
So we founded Consilium a couple of years ago. I founded it with my business partner, Hiba, and who's a dear friend now. She'd kill me if I didn't say that.
It's a very amiable workspace.
Yes, it is. You've been there.
Yes, I have.
So we founded it from the perspective of guiding students at the right time for college. We noticed that there were a lot of, and there are a lot of student counseling firms and agents as well. So we don't work as agents.
Okay.
We don't have any universities on our panel. Both of us have been quite passionate about education. We worked at a different private counseling firm before. Hiba worked at a school as well. And then we decided just to join forces to hopefully tell students that they need to be thinking about college, or at least their skills development from a much earlier age. So that by the time they get to the stage when they have to write their application, they're able to do it themselves. That they have access to a network of people who can help them. They have access to information. That their entire college application plan is laid out in such a way that it's also stress-free for them, because the last year of college, of A-levels, or if you're in the IB or your 12th grade, the last year is very stressful anyway. And you want to make the most of it because it's your last year in school anyway. So that's the idea behind it. So we provide assistance with in developing reading skills, writing skills, when and how you should take the SATs, if at all. How you should. There are options. Oh my God. And most importantly, how to make your university list. Because before anything
really
else,
important.
that's the most important thing, and that's where we have to manage a lot of expectations.
But expectations is the key there, I think. So, and Shehryar, you are in charge of running a vast network of schools. And I believe that the Salamat schools are doing the IB as well, and they're doing the A-levels and the metric.
Yes, we offer the whole 9 yards as far as educational programs.
It's a complete experience.
Yes.
So, do you find that it's helpful for students, because most schools do have counselors in-house who can advise students on how and where to apply.
Absolutely,
and things like that.
It's part of the offering. If you're doing A-levels, you have, as a school, you need to have counselors in place, and all the things that Hassan talked about. The school we at SICAS provided in-house. We do have some counseling services which are outsourced, but bulk of it we do it ourselves.
Interesting. And again, the success of a lot of A-level programs is very dependent on where your students go to college then ultimately, because it's a real feather in your cap if you've got X number of students who
It's a competitive marketplace, so in order to attract the best A-level students to your campus, you need to have a strong legacy of having placed students into the top universities worldwide. And that's the direction we're on, and the direction we're likely to improve upon. So,
but do you feel like over the years, and I'm sure Hassan can also chime in on this, is that do you feel that over the years, even with the A-level system itself changing, with the A, what used to be, back in the day when, I sat my O-levels and my A-levels, an A was an A, and then you had a B, and then you had a C, and that's what it was. But now you've got an A star, and then you've got an A, and that to me sounds very congratulatory. It's like, well, I got all A's, and you're like, no, you didn't. That was not a real A. But do you think that it also kind of leads to this this weird sense of of overachievement and this sort of deepening sense of competition that everybody needs to get all A's, and you have, kids who get like 32 A's and
18 is what I've heard.
find it
Who's the one with
frightening.
32?
But I think I'm exaggerating, but I'm pretty sure that there's some kid somewhere in Pakistan who's got 30 A's.
Well, Cambridge is an extremely well-respected system, and the degree or the any program qualification that you have is recognized the world over. So it's up to Cambridge to whether in my time when I was O-level student in 93, 95, we had the A1 and the A2. So it was sort of, so it's been there for a while. It's just how you label it.
Really? I'm not familiar with the A1 and the A2.
Yeah, so I mean, that was, so they've been changing their pattern.
But do you feel that students are much more sort of hungry for the A's now?
Yes, I think doing well in your O-levels is becoming the norm. Almost, at our school, almost 50% of the grades are A's or A stars. So, so some would argue that could be construed as grade inflation. But, there's always going to be the top 10% of your students, the top 5% of the students.
Who are going to be getting straight A's regardless of what you call them.
And so the yardstick has changed, So previously, I remember when I was a student at HSN, like getting 6 A's or 7 A's was like the top 1%, top 5% of the school.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like amazing to do that.
So now, you still have the top 5% getting, 6 A stars, 8 A stars, or 10 A stars, right? So depending on which school you're at. So that doesn't change. Like there will always be a way to differentiate yourself from the rest.
Okay, so you're saying that the top sort of 5 or the top 10% student will always be getting those kind of A's, whether you call them an A star or just an A, if you're bright, and that's it. Well, I suppose that's fair.
But the beauty of the system, as Cambridge has defined themselves, especially as Cambridge is growing, they have over 500 test centers nationwide. Many the number of students sitting for O-levels and A-levels is rising exponentially.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
So they
that's
have
interesting too.
So I feel they need to cater to the lowest common denominator as well, and for students to walk away with O-levels or A-levels with with 6 A's or 4 A's. At 4 A's, for example, might be the middle of the road student at the 50% threshold.
Right.
So it's a good feeling to walk away with A's rather than B's and C's.
That's true. But I don't know. I feel like there's a sort of increased pressure now, more than ever, to be academically that successful. And the O-levels is like the crunch time, isn't it? Because the O-levels is where those are the grades that you send in.
Basically your first step, essentially.
And
you send those grades
that you send
exactly
to colleges,
Yes.
and then that's where you get an offer based on those O-level grades. And it's also like the biggest exam that you take. It's the most stressful, like you said. It's got the most subjects. It's also the first time that you're going to a test center with your paper and your little see-through pencil case. Really scary, there's sort of lines of students. Everyone's saying that.
And now it's also become more competitive because most of, up till, I'd say, 10 years ago or so, 8 A's or 9 subjects was considered okay. Anybody who had 10 subjects would have been... Exactly, and anybody who had 10 subjects would have been like, oh, great, okay, you are taking 10 subjects. But now, 12 seems to be the norm.
The norm?
Most top performing students will take 12 subjects.
And why is that?
Because they just think that that's going to make their application stand out, because that way they're also able to dive into different subjects. Because when you only have 8 or 9 subjects, most schools offer them in particular combinations.
Yeah.
So if you're either a pre-med student or a pre-engineering student, or you're an arts and humanities
student.
student.
And the core amount of subjects, those 5 ones that everybody does, is fixed for everybody,
so
standard.
After those 5 subjects, which are English, Urdu, Pakistan Studies, Islamiat, and Mathematics, you just have combination of subjects that really specializes your academic career right from the start. So most students who, especially students who are planning on going to the US, let's say, who are open to studying multiple things at the same time. Those are the students who are now looking at additional subjects as well.
So sort of like trying to make it a liberal arts experience as much as possible.
Exactly.
Sort of.
So if they have, let's say, physics, chemistry, biology, they might also take commerce or business studies just because they'd like to know. Because I also recommend that not 12 subjects, let's say, but at least 1 or 2 subjects that are outside of the chosen combination, just so that maybe by the time you're in your A-levels, you decide, okay, I don't really want to do engineering anymore. I'd rather pursue a business
So you already
career.
have that kind of exposure to certain subjects, or just as diverse as possible, and that's sort of going to enhance your decision making.
Because
for
other
later.
education streams, for example, the IB, as far as my understanding is, it allows you to explore different disciplines at the same time.
Yes,
So,
and actually I think that kind of diversity is something that we will talk more about in just a second, because we're going to just hop to a quick break and more on diversity of subjects later. See you in a second. Hi, welcome back. We're on set talking about college apps and the sort of subjects that you should be taking to success in the future. So, Hassan, I think that what we were talking about before the break was really important, is that students should be taking as diverse a range of subjects as possible if they aren't quite sure what they want to be doing in the future. Because like you said, pre-med students, usually at that point, you should know if you want to be a doctor, because then you take your science subjects so that you just carry on doing those. Or a lot of kids take math and engineering subjects.
Yes.
Because it's laying a foundation. And even with literature and art, I feel like the sooner you start,
the better it
the
is.
deeper your understanding is by
Exactly.
the time you actually reach freshman year.
Especially when you have to take subjects like such as the SATs in world history or the SAT2 in English literature. You're only able to manage those if you had those subjects when you were in your O-levels.
That's
because
true,
the
that's true.
syllabus is extensive and the sort of questions that they ask, the sort of understanding that's required of you, you're not able to develop that just by reading an SAT subject test book.
Oh, okay. So it's not just the prep. You will have an edge if you've actually studied it in class.
And if you're planning, as you said, if you're planning on studying those subjects in college, it's better to have that base laid out at an earlier age. However, for students who are confused about what they'd like to do later on, but they have an inkling about the fact that they might take science subjects later on, it's just best that they take them in O-levels, because then you're not able to progress to A-levels without those science subjects. And
Yes.
even if a school allows it, you're not able to grasp that core understanding of that subject. And definitely
you just have
not
to start at that level.
exactly.
Yeah. But that's really interesting, because when I think about college applications, I think about being in the A-levels and then applying, which is usually the time that you do apply, like at the end of A1, halfway through A2.
A2. The first half of A2,
Yeah, exactly, the first half of A2. So that already feels like high school and you're older. But actually, from what we've just said, it sounds like you should actually be talking to a counselor when you're choosing your O-level subjects.
Actually, I would say, on the balance of it, A-level subject selection is more important than O-level subject selection.
Okay.
O-level subject selection is only important, as Hassan mentioned, that if you have sciences, you can stay with the sciences. It's hard to go from business to science. Whereas if you're doing sciences, you can transition into business, right?
Yes.
So you leave your options open that way. But I think as a school, the counseling that a child receives for A-level subjects is of critical of nature.
Okay.
And it's at that time where you're, closing certain doors for yourself if you don't have the right subject selection.
Okay.
And you also have to have some inkling as to which universities, which country you're going to be applying to as far as universities are concerned.
Oh, okay. And why is that important?
So, if you're applying to an undergraduate program in the US, they typically don't like to see you with only science subjects. So they would like to see a diversity of subjects and you being able to excel in a variety of disciplines. So you're being able to understand the humanities as well as the sciences, understand
a little bit of science, a little bit of history, a little bit of literature.
Even languages for that matter. I think doing English language or doing any foreign language, if you can do it at A-levels, it's like that's the icing on the cake.
Oh, okay. So it's not just the O-level, but for the A-levels, it's good to show that kind of range.
So IB has sort of made that part and parcel of what they do. A-levels is mimicking IB to a certain extent. For example, Cambridge offers the ACE diploma. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's the AICE. So, and they've introduced a new subject called Global Perspectives, right? So Global Perspectives become a core subject for the ACE diploma, and then students are expected to do one science, one humanities, one language.
That's a fantastic structure, actually.
So it mimics the IB system in certain ways.
So do you find, Hassan, that when you have students who come to you and the strong applicants are ones who have this kind of diverse subject background, are they generally the stronger applicant?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So as Shehryar said, at this point, you need to know when you're in A-levels, you need to have an idea of what world region you're going to be applying to.
Okay.
So your subject selection and your grades, whether they make you a strong applicant or not, depends on where you're going to apply to. So the UK, for example, is very grade particular.
Oh, all right.
Your acceptance is also conditional. They send you a predicted grade requirement. They send you condition, basically.
Right, and so you have to get like two Bs and an A or whatever average.
Yes, mostly for the top end places, it's 1 A star and 2 As or all 3 As. And for certain subjects, for example, if you plan on studying economics, at most top places in the UK, you need to have mathematics in A-levels. That is something that most people don't really know.
Yeah.
And most students, they try to run away from A-level mathematics. But that's something that, unfortunately, you have to do.
I empathize with them deeply.
However, so obviously a student who has a diversity of subjects and meets the prereqs for the UK and the grades are also good, that works for them. Okay, and to an extent for Canada as well. Okay. But if you're planning on applying to the US, that's just 1/4 of what's required for the application.
Oh, a quarter?
Exactly. They need to look at the transcripts, your internal transcripts.
Right.
So that's your grades. They're going to look at your personal essays. They're going to look at your extracurricular activities. And then they're going to look at anything else, for example, your external tests, the SATs, the SAT subject tests.
Wow,
and your recommendations from
school. So you really need to be a much more well-rounded human being
for the US
to go to college in America. Which is nice.
Which is nice. What I've discerned is that the UK, they really like a student who's specialized right from the start. They know what you want to do. Even the essay for the UK is more of a one-sided argumentative essay that this is why you should take me. I'm really, I'd be really, I'd perform well in chemical engineering, let's say. For the US,
really kind of laser focused.
Yes, and you apply to a certain program. You only have, for the UCAS, you apply, for the UK, you apply through the system called the UCAS.
Okay.
You only have 5 options. And you can only apply to one type of program across all 5. Because the same essay goes to all 5 options.
Okay, so it's kind of like a common app, but for
the UK. Yeah. And you apply to a particular subject for a particular program.
Oh, okay. So it's quite specialized from the beginning. So you have to be really clear about your ambitions.
About why exactly.
When you're applying for that sort of thing.
And for the US, you apply to the college rather than for the program.
Yeah.
Of course, within the college, you can apply to the business school or to the engineering school, but they're more concerned with who you are as a person, whether you're going to fit into their college or not. So when it comes to the US applications, the word fit is heard around a lot.
So that's really crucial because I find that a lot of parents, and I'm sure Shehryar, you have met parents like this also, is that there's a certain idea that I want my kid or the child themselves, they want to go to an Ivy League and that's it. Or they want to go to Oxbridge and that's it because that's the best. And that's not necessarily the best for every individual because each campus has a different environment, each program has its own approach, and it might not be the right environment for your child. You might just not be suited to a place. Like you might not do well in Harvard, but thrive at a smaller place like Hampshire, for example. So like how important is that when you're in to convince parents that it's okay, it doesn't have to be a bumper sticker worthy college to be good for your child?
I think that's the first step. As we were discussing earlier as well, managing parents and their expectations is the first step and the most difficult at times as well as counselors and I'm sure as a school as well. The first step is to tell them that Ivy Leagues, Oxford and Cambridge are not part of theIvy League. MIT is not the Ivy League school. So they don't even have an understanding of what Ivy League is. They just
what are Ivy Leagues? For our audience.
So you
can tell your parents this.
I think Shehryar is the best.
Well, it's actually started as a sporting league. So a bunch of universities got together and said, oh, we're going to compete with each other, have arranged fixtures in sports. So that's how the term Ivy League started.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. I thought it was just because they literally had...
And mostly, they were all schools in the northeast of the United States. So that's one of the reasons, Stanford, and there's no Ivy League on the West Coast, right? But typically,
East Coast
in Pakistan, like when you hear the term Ivy League, you're really looking at the top 15 school in the US.
Right? Okay.
And national school, not liberal arts colleges. So there's
liberal arts colleges.
Well, typically, liberal arts have their own niche. They're not, national universities, which have a different set of criteria that they have to meet. Liberal arts schools are typically mostly focused on undergraduate teaching and mostly walk away with a BA degree, maybe a BSc degree in some liberal arts schools. But again, liberal arts schools also have a strong focus on the humanities and on languages.
But do you think that maybe this is why when, this sort of mythical, the Ivy League or this top 15 that you're talking about, because they are well known, Desi parents want their kids to go to those.
Yes.
And I find it really interesting that you're saying that none of these schools or very few of them are liberal arts colleges. So you're so Desi kids are not being encouraged to study the liberal arts because it doesn't they're not going to a prestigious college.
If you go to Harvard or Princeton or Dartmouth, the undergraduate education mimics or is similar to a liberal arts education, but the term liberal arts has different connotations when it applies to university.
Okay.
So you do get a liberal arts education at an Ivy League institution, but it's not a liberal arts school. So,
okay. All right, that's a bit comforting that everyone's just being shoved into engineering.
Amherst and Williams are typical liberal arts colleges, right? But they're not considered in national universities. They're typical small student bodies, small cohorts, and again a focus only on undergraduate teaching mostly.
Okay, so I suppose, Hassan, that's where services like yours become really useful because your expertise isn't being able to, and I'm sure that by the time you develop a relationship with a client, you kind of understand what their personalities are like as well, and what kind of school might be the best fit for them.
I'm glad you brought that up. So Hiba and I, that's the first thing that we do. We try to figure out where will this student thrive. You know that given their family backgrounds or the sort of expectations that the parents have, and then looking at the expectations that the students have and of what they expect from college life as well. You know that certain kids will be better off in the UK. They want that specialized degree. They want to just sit for an exam at the end of the year. They get their own freedom there because mostly when you live in the UK, you are able to live on your own as a student.
And you're also closer to home. You can come home
exactly.
and every time there's a holiday, there's that possibility that you can.
And for most of those students, the most important thing is that we just have that tapa of a foreign university, and for them, the UK makes sense as well. Students who are okay with exploring, let's say, their intellectual horizons, their personal horizons, the US makes a lot more sense because you're living on campus with a lot of different nationalities, with a lot of different types of people. So you do understand, even within the US, you figure out what type of student would be better at a liberal arts college versus a national university. Who would want a city experience versus a rural experience, who'd thrive where. So that's the first thing that we have to figure out. And obviously, it doesn't come within the first meeting. You have to get to know them better. They have to open up. They start talking about their family problems and their dramas. So the counseling extends to that part as well.
Ooh,
I've had calls with mothers at 11 in the evening. Oh, my son hasn't come home yet. Please talk to him. So I know, but you have to at some point, because also if they're not going to be focused on their education at that point, or not just their application, but on their lives at that point, you develop this sort of relationship with them, and you want them to do well.
Of course.
So yes, we do message them at 11 in the evening. I think you should go home. Your mother is looking for you.
Oh my God, so you actually have that kind of clout. That is so fantastic. And I want to talk more about this. We're going to go to a quick break and come back and talk about the human aspect of education. So don't go away. Hi, welcome back to the show. We're talking about applications to college and the whole college experience and how to figure out what is the best fit for you. So Hassan, you were telling me about how counseling is also such a personal process as well, because you really get invested in a student's future. And I find that so sweet, because you probably get students a few months prior to applications. But when is a good time to start the application process?
So to start the skills development, I think you should start right from 9th grade onwards. There are certain
grade,
things,
okay.
when it comes to your extracurricular activities, there are certain things that you just can't do. You can't do all of it within the last year.
Yeah,
And
or
if
you can't just sort of do it in the summer and do like
and
an
if you
internship.
do, colleges,
at
they're
Care.
smart, you know. They know that you're doing this just for the application. You're not really doing it because this is something you're passionate about.
Right.
So you need to start on certain things much earlier. You need to start on your reading and writing and, you know, perhaps public speaking or mathematical skills. Certain skills need to come earlier.
Right.
If you plan on applying for any art school, you need to start your portfolio much earlier, because finishing all of that within the last year gets very, very hectic. And then the
And it's
college...
not an organic process then.
Exactly.
You're just sort of cramming things in just to look good.
Just to look good. And colleges know now. They can tell.
Oh, they're onto you.
So otherwise, if you have most of that ready, we try to have students come in 2 years before they have to apply, so towards the end of their
2
O-levels.
years, okay.
Because most students don't really utilize their summer time properly. That's the time when you should be studying for the SATs. So when students travel abroad, we try to figure out what sort of activities they can do there,
Oh,
perhaps
wow.
with the family.
That's so great.
Yes, so one of the things that we wanted to do was tell students that the limited number of activities that are available in Lahore are not the only thing that you can do.
Yeah.
You can reach out to different organizations. We work with various NGOs and corporations that are sort of on board with us. So if our student,
Sort of.
it's not like an official thing, right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
we've used our network essentially.
Of course.
So if a student goes to a particular NGO that everybody goes to, we try to make sure that they come up with a plan of their own, so that they're not doing a run-of-the-mill activity. And for that to happen, you need to start a bit early.
Right. And also then have that time for genuine introspection as well.
that
You
as
might
well.
just realize if you're volunteering at a school for low-income kids, you might find that you are actually really good at it, and you might want to
Exactly.
do something that involves you interacting with kids or teaching. In some
And when it comes to the college
capacity.
essays, if you haven't done anything that you've listed on your application, you're not going to be able to write an authentic application. So that's the thing. So we highly recommend every student to at least go for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Just take part in whatever you're saying you're interested in.
And that's really
Because-
important, authenticity, because again, people who read those essays have been reading thousands of essays, and yours won't stand out if it's obviously fakey.
And they can tell. I'm pretty sure they can tell by
And
now.
you guys don't write anybody's essays
We don't
for
write
them.
essays.
That is
No.
something
Yes.
that should be very clear here, that
We help them
counselors
develop
are
their-
not writing your application for you. So Shehryar, do you think that it would be, that maybe schools should now encourage this sort of 9th grade beginning to kind of just generally crystallize or think about what you might want to do in the future? And how important do you think is it to educate parents about this? And not just in the sense that, you know, to panic them, but also kind of, again, like Hassan said, manage expectations.
I think the kind of counseling that works best is person-to-person counseling.
Right, yeah.
We also offer group counseling sessions, but what Hassan really talked about was 9th grade becomes important from the US application perspective. If you're applying to the UK, you don't really have to start all the way in 9th grade. If you're just doing well in O-levels and A-levels, your grades should be able to get you into a good UK school. But for the US, since the extracurriculars are important, so then at the 9th grade level, you do have to start working with the students. For example, if he's a good athlete or a good debater, then the school has to provide the platform by which those kids can hone those skills. So they
And
can.
school is that kind of intensive environment where a counselor might know a student for a much longer time, and
Absolutely.
school can better recognize that, you know, like you said, someone's a good athlete, someone's a good debater.
Absolutely.
You know, so you can really kind of help each child find their niche.
Yes, and I think the private education sector is competitive enough that students are discerning between schools based on the strength of the extracurriculars. And I think that's why a lot of students choose us, because we spend a lot of effort in developing our extracurricular programs, be it sports, debates, drama. Our students are typically staying back after school. A-level students typically stay back after school for at least 2-3 hours. We would like them to stay back that long so they can put in that extra time towards honing those skills. And in the long run, whether you're in a Pakistan team for debates or able to represent your country in a particular sport at your age group level,
which is exceptional.
These are the X factors that I think really makes you stand out from the crowd.
Right.
And
I suppose even if you can't make it to that kind of sort of national team level, you've still got enough competitive experience under your belt, and there's so much growth in students when they do any kind of activity like this outside the classroom. So it's not just, I'm sure, about getting medals or sort of being the best. It's also about growing as a person.
Absolutely. I mean, that's your school vision and mission right there. Why does the school exist? And I think that's a existential crisis most schools have to ultimately face. Are you there just to get students through their O-levels and A-levels, or are you there to provide something extra? Right? So
to sort of grow them as people also. Now, one thing I'm really curious about is that the top sort of 10% of student probably goes to study abroad, but a lot of students stay in Pakistan and go to college in Pakistan as well. And sort of, do you get students who need help with those applications as well? Or is it generally the abroad ones?
We do get queries regarding that. And so some of the top private institutions here, they also have rigorous application processes, right?
They do.
And the biggest problem is students don't really know how to write the application. They don't really understand how to write the essay part of it. So of course we work with those students as well. And then we get a lot of queries from the local stream of education regarding their subject choices. So whether
because
they should...
they're probably coming from schools where they don't have access to counseling, or they don't really have access to the kind of information that kids from different schools might have.
Basically. And then their queries are more along the lines of whether I should switch from sciences from my matriculation to should I do an FA or an FSC, and what is out there for me if not med school or engineering.
And these
so
are really
those are the
important
sort of questions that they have, and even if they're not applying abroad. So yes, we do cater to them. Currently, we receive a lot of those queries on social media, and it's a one-off thing, but of course, if somebody would like to come in and have that type of
because I feel like that's
mentoring.
Also something that there's a lot of potential there is to help local students get to local university as well, because college is a great privilege for all students, no matter where you go. And I'm somebody who went to a privileged college, but I also went to Punjab University. And there are so many bright students out there who really deserve a chance to make the most of that intelligence and those capabilities that they have. And what's the scholarship scene like for students?
You mean financial aid or scholarships?
Yes.
Well, I think one of the
bright students who need a scholarship.
So we have a lot of students who apply to foreign U.S. universities and apply to LUMS. The reason why it's tough for them to apply to U.S. schools is because there is an expectation that they would receive financial assistance. It's far easier getting into a U.S. school if you're paying the full sticker price.
Of course, you could go anywhere if you're paying the full
And I think that's where parents need to realize at an early stage the sticker price for a foreign education is pretty steep. That's putting it mildly. So the option for LUMS or any good local universities should always be there as a backup for those students aspiring to go abroad.
And do you think that if more students, and especially after 9/11 and the whole visa issues and things, that it's harder now to even get clearance to study abroad, more students are staying home to study. Do you think that that's helping improve the caliber of local universities?
I think yes, because that particular crop of students that used to just all of them go abroad. Now a large majority of them are staying here. And even from those who are applying abroad, a large majority of them are looking towards Europe and East Asian universities in Hong Kong and Singapore as well, because they're more affordable and less visa restrictions. So basically,
and that's really interesting because you're also getting a more diverse cultural experience and doing something that is unique. And this might end up being a really wonderful opportunity than just going to some usual American
And I think parents and students are both now also focusing on the return on their investment in education. So the opportunity that students would get upon their graduation to enter the workforce of a particular country, that also factors into their decision making.
That's also important.
For example, if you're going to the US, it's getting a lot harder, if not impossible, to get a H-1 visa to work in the US. Hence, a lot of parents are now looking at the option for Canada, where paths of immigration are far easier.
Yes.
So that's
also really important.
So it's the counselors, such schools or third-party counselors. They really need to educate the parents with regards to how to get that return on investment, because education has changed over the past many years. You can now peek into a classroom at Harvard because they've taken the education online. So
amazing.
Access to knowledge is there. It's just
And I was reading somewhere that right now, for students in school right now, they will be doing jobs in the future that don't even exist right now. And it's a huge number. It's like 63% of students in schools right now will be doing jobs that don't even exist.
Absolutely.
So we really, as sort of parents and educators, need to probably keep as open a mind as possible to what's out there.
Exactly, and that is something that I think is the biggest challenge when it comes to parents as well, and when it comes to students exploring different options. So on this topic, one of my favorite people to read is Ken Robinson, and he talks about revolutionizing schools. And the whole idea was that the way education exists right now is a post-industrial revolution society where certain jobs were created, then that assembly line
that
of
was
school.
the need at that time.
So the sort of skills that need to be developed now should be transferable skills. So no matter what program you end up in college, or whether it's an online program, where employers also need to understand that even if somebody's just done an online course, it's as relevant as somebody who went there, as long as the knowledge is there.
Yes, because the world has changed now.
Exactly.
So
and those jobs, as society changes, new jobs will come,
there will be different needs
and different
different
skill set will need to be implemented, which the current system of education globally doesn't really cater to. So I think it's a bigger paradigm shift that needs to take place.
But this is like a conversation for another show. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today and giving us such important information about the whole process. And I think that Pakistani students are quite well placed now to sort of take their place in the world. Thank you all for watching. This has been fun. I hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Coffee Table. Bye now.